The early summer sunlight in Chicago bathed the tree-lined streets of the Gold Coast district in a golden glow. The elegant architecture shimmered beneath the soft warmth of the morning, and the faint scent of blooming magnolias drifted through the open car window. My Lexus RX glided past the boutique-lined streets and through the tall iron gates of my parents' estate, where stone lions stood guard like silent sentinels. It was Sunday evening, time for the Griffin family's weekly dinner. No matter how busy our lives became, these dinners were sacred, a ritual that Mother never allowed to be missed. As I parked in front of the Grand Colonial entrance, the massive oak doors opened, and there she was, Martha Griffin, my mother, stepping out with her usual grace. Every inch of her exuded composure, her silver hair pinned neatly in a chignon, her two-piece cream suit perfectly tailored, and a Tiffany pearl necklace catching the light at her throat. She was a woman who never raised her voice, yet somehow, her presence commanded obedience. "Ashley, you're a bit late today," she said, her tone calm but edged with that familiar disappointment that always made me feel like I was still a teenager. "I'm sorry, Mother. The final wedding planning meeting ran longer than expected." I smoothed my long brown hair, forcing a polite smile as I stepped into the marble foyer. The scent of lavender polish lingered in the air. The family portraits watching silently from the walls, generations of Griffins, all proud, all successful. My navy Brooks Brothers suit fit snugly, professional and composed. I had spent 10 years building a solid reputation at one of Chicago's most prestigious accounting firms, earning my senior manager title through tireless dedication and quiet resolve. I had no scandals, no drama, just work. In the living room, Father sat by the fireplace, the flicker of flames reflecting off his gold-rimmed glasses. Joseph Griffin, a retired bank executive, embodied dignity itself. His posture was straight, his expression measured, a man who believed that reputation was everything. "Good evening, Father," I greeted softly. He lowered his newspaper and nodded. "Ah, Ashley, where's Brian? I thought he'd be joining us today." "He said he couldn't make it, something came up at work." Father's lips pressed into a thin line. A busy man, I see." Before I could respond, the click of heels echoed down the staircase. My sister, Kimberly, appeared like a scene out of a glossy magazine, draped in a pale pink Chanel dress, her honey blonde hair cascading in waves, every move effortlessly graceful. Her makeup was flawless, her smile polished. Well, big sister, you're unusually late," she said lightly, her words laced with subtle mockery. "With only 2 months until your wedding, you still need planning meetings?" Her tone was playful, but something about the glint in her eyes made my stomach tighten. I brushed it off with a small, controlled smile. At the time, I didn't realize just how deeply her words would haunt me later. Dinner was, as always, perfect, prepared by Maria, our loyal housekeeper who had worked for the Griffins since before I was born. Gibson's prime rib steak, seasonal salad, and Eli's famous cheesecake. The crystal glasses sparkled beneath the chandelier as we ate, our conversation light and poised. Yet my mind wandered to Brian. Brian Adams, president of Adams Development Group, a real estate firm worth over $50 million in annual sales, a man everyone admired, handsome, confident, impeccably dressed. He drove a Bentley Flying Spur and was on a first-name basis with half of Chicago's elite. On paper, he was perfect, but behind closed doors, something had changed. "Ashley's smart," he had said once, swirling his wine at dinner, "but she lacks feminine appeal." That moment had burned itself into my memory. He had laughed coldly when I protested. "Leave the accounting work to your juniors. You make too many mistakes lately. Once we're married, I want you to quit your job. It's unbecoming for my wife to work." His words had sliced through me, sharp, dismissive, humiliating, and yet, I had stayed quiet, convincing myself it was just stress, just nerves before the wedding. But then came the whispers, the dinners he had with Kimberly to discuss the wedding plans, the shopping trips, the photos of them at private events, laughing too closely, standing too comfortably. Social media began to fill with pictures of best friends out for brunch. At first, I tried to ignore it. Then came the nights he didn't answer his phone, the excuses, the distance. The night before the wedding rehearsal, Kimberly casually announced, Actually, I won't be able to attend the ceremony. I felt a pang of confusion. What? Why? She simply smiled, shrugged, and went back to scrolling through her phone. When both she and Brian arrived late to the rehearsal the next day, I felt a cold wave of dread, but everyone dismissed my concern. You're being paranoid, Ashley, they said. You're just nervous. Perhaps I was, or perhaps I already knew the truth and just didn't want to face it. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, crystal blue skies stretching endlessly above the city. The spire of Fourth Presbyterian Church glimmered in the sunlight, its bells tolling softly. It was a venue steeped in history and elegance, reserved for Chicago's finest families. Today was supposed to be my day, our day. In the bridal suite, the stylists worked meticulously. My gown, a custom design from Nordstrom's bridal salon, fit like a dream. The lace shimmered in the sunlight pouring through the tall windows. Mother stood behind me, fastening a Tiffany diamond necklace around my neck. Her reflection met mine in the mirror. Her eyes were soft, proud, emotional. I wore this on my wedding day, she said tenderly, and one day, your daughter will too. Her words made my throat tighten. For a moment, everything felt right, whole. I had no idea that within hours, that illusion would shatter. Luxury cars arrived one after another outside, Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, BMW. 400 guests, Chicago's social elite, filed into the grand hall. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, the air buzzed with excitement. Everything was perfect, too perfect. 1 hour until the ceremony, the planner said. I turned to Mother. Have you heard from Kimberly? She shook her head, forcing a smile. Not yet, but don't worry, dear, she'll be here. Her voice trembled ever so slightly. By 11 o'clock, Brian still hadn't arrived. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Where's the groom? Was there an accident? Father's face was stone. He called Brian's groomsmen again and again, but no one answered. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I tried his number one last time. Finally, the call connected. Brian, where are you? The ceremony's starting. A pause. Then, a laugh. Cold, cruel. I'm in Hawaii, with Kimberly. My breath caught. What do you mean? I've decided to marry Kimberly instead. Consider your ceremony cancelled. I stared at my reflection, white gown, trembling hands, eyes widening in disbelief. You're joking, I whispered. No, Kimberly and I have been together since right after our engagement. She's more attractive than you, younger too. Honestly, I never intended to marry you. I just wanted to see how long you'd play the fool. The line went dead. I don't remember much after that, just the sound of my phone hitting the floor, the sudden gasps from nearby, and the cold rush of air as the room seemed to spin. I collapsed. 400 guests saw the Griffin family's pride crumble that day. The church, once filled with light, felt suffocating. The stained glass windows mocked me, their colors cruelly vivid. Father's jaw was tight with fury. Mother's tears soaked my veil. Cameras flashed, relentless. Reporters whispered. Miss, should we call an ambulance? Maria cried. Such humiliation, Father muttered, voice heavy with defeat. As I lifted my gaze toward the ornate ceiling, I saw the light filtering through the glass in shades of red and blue, mocking, indifferent. My heart had never felt so hollow. Hours later, when the guests had left and the church was silent again, I sat alone in the bridal suite, staring at my reflection, the bride who never was. My phone buzzed one last time. A message, from Kimberly. Looks like it's going to be a happy honeymoon. Love, Kimberly. That evening, back in my condominium, I sat by the window, the city lights flickering below. My wedding dress hung limply on the chair beside me, its fabric shimmering faintly in the dark. A single tear slid down my cheek and landed on the white silk. But this time, I didn't break. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Something inside me, something long dormant, was awakening. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The morning light filtering through my apartment blinds carried a cold sharpness. The sky over Chicago was pale blue, the kind that promised warmth but delivered only reflection. I sat at my desk, a cup of untouched coffee beside my laptop, watching the screen flicker to life as I logged into the accounting firm's VPN. For weeks after the wedding fiasco, I had tried to sleep, to forget, to let time do what it does. But betrayal doesn't fade, it calcifies. It sharpens your instincts. That's what led me back to Brian's company's books. The same data I had briefly checked just 2 days before what was supposed to be my wedding. That day, something had felt off, a subtle irregularity that, in my emotional chaos, I had ignored. Now, my accountant's instincts, honed by years of balancing ledgers and exposing inconsistencies, stirred awake with icy precision. "This is strange," I muttered, scrolling through the Excel sheets. There were payments that didn't make sense, transfers labeled as interior design fees, but with figures inflated beyond any reasonable range. My brow furrowed as I clicked into the details, repeated payments, all directed to a single vendor, EKG Design Works. My stomach twisted. EKG, Kimberly Griffin. Her initials, her company. I felt the air leave my lungs as the magnitude of the pattern began to form. "This amount is more than triple the market rate," I whispered to myself. I began taking screenshots, each file named carefully, time-stamped, and stored in a private folder. Every click, every saved document was both methodical and personal. My heartbreak had been turned into data. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city lights outside my window blurred through my tears. Every flicker of passing headlights reminded me of that day at the church, the laughter, the gasps, the cameras flashing as I collapsed in my wedding dress. The memory still burned like acid in my chest. But now, there was purpose. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called someone I trusted. "Sarah Johnson," I said quietly when she answered. "It's Ashley. I need your advice." Sarah had been a colleague for years, a sharp tax specialist who had once worked for the IRS. If there was anyone who could help me see the full picture, it was her. "Ashley? My God, I saw what happened on the news. Are you okay?" Her voice was gentle, concerned. "I'm fine," I lied. "Actually, this is professional. Can we meet?" A few hours later, we sat in a private corner booth at Chicago Cut Steakhouse. The clinking of silverware, the low murmur of business conversations, it all felt distant as I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. Sarah's expression shifted as she scrolled through the files, her brows knitted, and then she exhaled slowly. "This," she said, tapping the screen, "this is a textbook case of laundering. They're using fake invoices to funnel company funds into personal accounts. It's deliberate, and big." My pulse quickened. "How big?" "Just estimating." She scanned further. "We're talking over $5 million, possibly more. If this goes public, the IRS will tear this apart." 5 million. That number echoed in my mind like a bell. A plan began to take shape, slow, deliberate, inevitable. From that day on, my double life began. By day, I performed my regular accounting duties, keeping my composure at the firm. By night, I became something else, an investigator, a strategist, a woman determined to reclaim her dignity through truth. Endless hours blurred together. I spent nights poring over ledgers, tracing payments, identifying false vendors. I followed the trail of money like a hunter tracking footprints through fog. Each discovery led to another. The fake design invoices had begun just weeks after our engagement. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Every supposed business expense was tied to something deeply personal: luxury handbags, jewelry, spa trips, deposits at Hawaiian resorts. I felt nausea rising. They had planned this from the beginning. With every forged contract I uncovered, with every false payment I documented, my anger hardened into resolve. I wasn't acting out of revenge anymore. I was acting out of principle. The more I dug, the more witnesses began to emerge. Actually, the wedding venue manager confessed during a discreet conversation. "I noticed something off. Your fiancé and your sister often stayed behind alone after the planning meetings. I thought it was strange, but..." He stopped, clearly uncomfortable. Later, a front desk clerk from the Four Seasons confirmed my suspicion. They had reservations, often, always under fake names, always late. And then, the final piece, a statement from one of Brian's former accountants. "I was fired because I asked questions about the fake payments," she said bitterly. They said I was overstepping. By August, I had everything. My apartment had turned into a war room, walls covered in pinned documents, flowcharts, receipts, and timelines. My desk was buried beneath folders labeled Evidence AF. And then I found it, their airline tickets. Booked 2 months before the wedding. Destination: Honolulu, Hawaii. Passengers: Brian Coleman and Kimberly Griffin. That was it. The final nail in their golden coffin. The next morning, I put on my sharpest Brooks Brothers suit, the same one I had worn at the firm the day Brian first told me to quit my job. My reflection in the mirror looked calm, but inside, I felt something powerful, a still, unshakable resolve. It was time. I drove downtown to the Chicago Federal Building. The air smelled of rain and iron. When I entered the IRS office, I was directed to Special Agent Robert Smith, a man known for his integrity and unflinching professionalism. I placed the evidence on his desk, neatly bound, labeled, and indexed. Gathering this much data must have taken months, he said, scanning the first few pages. It did, I replied quietly, but the truth needed to be revealed. He looked at me, his expression serious. This is major, Ms. Griffin. Corporate fraud, tax evasion, laundering, it's airtight. We'll move immediately. As I left the building, the sun was setting over Michigan Avenue. I watched the city lights shimmer on the wet pavement and whispered to myself, this isn't revenge, this is justice. 2 days later, O'Hare International Airport buzzed with its usual chaos, rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, and the faint aroma of coffee and jet fuel. I stood in the arrivals lobby, wearing a black Chanel suit and sunglasses that hid my expression. Around me, reporters blended into the crowd, their cameras ready. The IRS agents waited discreetly near the gates. Then, I saw them. Kimberly emerged first, tanned, radiant, draped in designer clothes, a Louis Vuitton bag over her arm and an Hermes scarf around her neck. Beside her walked Brian, grinning smugly, carrying duty-free bags and whispering something to her that made her laugh. My gaze fixed on her left hand. The ring, my ring, sparkled under the airport lights. I took a deep breath as the loudspeaker echoed across the terminal. Mr. Brian Coleman, Miss Kimberly Griffin. Agent Smith stepped forward, his badge gleaming. This is the IRS. You are under arrest. The noise that followed was deafening, gasps, shouts, cameras clicking. What the hell is this? Brian barked, his face turning red. Kimberly's scream echoed as officers placed handcuffs around her wrists. The crowd began filming on their phones, the story already spreading like wildfire. I stepped forward, removing my sunglasses. Welcome back, Brian, Kimberly. Their faces froze. Ashley, Brian stammered. How did you? $5 million in tax evasion and money laundering, I said calmly. Every transaction, every forged invoice, every flight, even your honeymoon was paid for with stolen company funds. Kimberly's lips trembled. No, this can't be. Oh, it can, I replied softly. You see, I'm an accountant, and I always balance the books. Reporters swarmed forward, shouting questions. Is this revenge for your ruined wedding, Miss Griffin? I met their eyes steadily. No, this is not revenge. This is accountability. Agent Smith nodded at me. We'll handle it from here. As Brian and Kimberly were led away, the cameras flashed one last time. Kimberly cried out, Ashley, please, help me. I didn't answer. I simply turned away. The sound of the cuffs clicking shut behind me like punctuation to a long, painful chapter. Weeks later, the headlines read, high-profile developer arrested in $5 million fraud, insider accountant expose scheme. The case dominated Chicago's business pages for months, and when the verdict finally came, justice was swift. Brian Coleman, 5 years in federal prison. Kimberly Griffin, 3-year suspended sentence. Their empire, their reputation, their arrogance, gone. A year later, the world looked different. From my new office overlooking Millennium Park, the morning sun poured through the glass walls, painting everything gold. The brass plaque on my door gleamed. Griffin Forensic Accounting Firm. Funded by the IRS Whistleblower Reward. It had become one of Chicago's most respected firms specializing in financial crime investigation. My secretary, Jennifer, entered with a smile. "Ms. Griffin, the Silicon Valley client's here for the 9 o'clock meeting." "Thank you, Jennifer." I adjusted my jacket and glanced at the framed newspaper on the wall. A woman's intuition in fraud detection, how one accountant brought down a $5 million empire. The memory still stung, but it no longer hurt. It had transformed into strength. Just then, my brother Michael entered, his briefcase in hand, his smile proud. "The verdict's final," he said. "Brian's appeal was denied. Kimberly's moved out of state. It's over." I nodded slowly. Good. Justice was served. As he left, I turned to the window. Lake Michigan shimmered under the morning sun. A soft breeze carried the promise of renewal. On my desk was a new photo, me and Dr. David Anderson, the kind-hearted surgeon I'd met at a charity gala, a reminder that life always finds a way to heal what's broken. Outside, Chicago's skyline stretched endlessly, a city reborn, just like me. "Shall we begin?" I said, standing tall as the new client entered. The sunlight caught my reflection in the glass, calm, poised, unshakable. Ashley Griffin was no longer the betrayed bride. She was the woman who turned heartbreak into power and justice into legacy.